Happy Monday and welcome to Casting the Net, Reeling in Holistic Health, where we care about your mental health and well-being. I'm your host, Coach Rice, and I want to make sure that you tune in every Monday at 8 a.m. Central Standard Time, where I have my special guest on to talk about real issues that matter most. I want you to check us out on YouTube, Facebook Live, on Business Facebook page, also on the Be Awesome Network. Stay tuned. I think you're going to really like this next guest. Happy Monday and welcome to Casting the Net, where we care about your mental health and well-being. I am your host, Coach Rice, and I have a special guest today, and I'm excited to have this conversation. Her name is Tiffany Brearton. She is an author, speaker, I would say a sex trafficking advocate, which is really much needed, co-founder of She Was Made for More Ministry. So we're going to get into some candid conversation and talk about this a lot today about, and sex trafficking would be one of the subjects. But before we get into that, Tiffany, tell us where you're from and how did you embark upon this particular journey?
Yeah, I'm from Northern Kentucky, right by Cincinnati, and now I live in Jacksonville, Florida. Thank God it's warm here. But yeah, just my life kind of led to where I'm at right now. I have some background of a lot of trauma. Um, I was sexually abused as a young girl. Was really just throughout my teenage years suicidal and had just a lot of, eating disorders and mental disorders, all the things. And then at 18 years old, I, as a virgin, walked into a strip club. As my first adult job, I became an adult entertainer, a stripper. And really just trauma after trauma happened. And I found my place and where like all of the trauma surfaced. I had been divorced. My second husband died of leukemia. And it was just like there was a moment where it was like I couldn't push down the trauma anymore and I had to get healing.
Okay.
It was surface. So, this is kind of where I'm at now with the advocates and author and speaker because of I know the oppression and the healing that I've came through and came out of and really just want to be an advocate for those who are still going through some of those things.
Wow. And so you've been through quite a bit.
Some
You're,
things.
you lived through many, what many people just read about, right?
Yeah.
What was the moment when silence broke for you? Um, and you
Yeah.
really got into your healing journey?
Yeah, so several things kind of led up to me kind of getting my voice back. I did talk therapy for a while. I did EMDR therapy for a while. That was huge with breaking off of shame for me. Of course, I am a believer, and a lot of my healing was also spiritual too. I would go to every prayer night at my church and ask for prayer, and deliverance and wholeness and all the things. It was just like God was leading me down this healing path. And I just took one step at a time. So all those things kind of led, like God's still a God who does miracles, but it was like a long journey to the miracle of me getting my voice back. And all of those things came into play.
And so you went through sex trafficking yourself, right?
Yeah, this is the craziest story, and it's going to be shocking, I think, even to some of your listeners, because it was shocking to me.
Mm.
So, last year I was invited to be a speaker at a human trafficking awareness event, and I was like, "Oh, this is cool. Sure, like if God opens a door, usually I'll take it." But I was very confused because, I have the adult entertainment background. And so I was like, I guess they just need a stripper or someone with sexual trauma. So I went to the event and I was still just sharing my story and thought, God will do with whatever he wants to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the experts came up and, he was sharing slides and definitions and side effects and all these things. And one of the slides came up and it said, sex trafficking is an exchange of money for a sexual act. And all of a sudden, the lights came on, and I
Mm.
realized that God was trying to show me that my story was of trafficking too.
Oh,
And
wow.
it's happening to every single adult entertainer, every single woman who's into pornography, there's an act, there's a sexual act and it's legal human trafficking. And so we think of human trafficking, we think of, Hollywood's version. It's in a van,
Yes.
it's chained in a room, which these things, of course, these things happen, but most of the time, it's not that way. It's a slow grooming process. It's a boyfriend, it's a mother, it's a family member, or it's in these industries, these sex industries. And so now I'm kind of screaming through the rooftop about it because every time I talk to someone that's like me and who has a story, their eyes just open up and they're like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. And it's happening every single day in America. And it's just like, I mean, again, I'm a believer, and God's children are just not supposed to be for sale. They're not
Amen.
supposed to be for sale. So I'm just using my voice that God gave me back and screaming about it, because there is healing and there is a better way, and God can use all of this and turn it around, and make it his message.
It's interesting because you answered both questions. Well, first question, I love it because I mean, literally, I did not expect you to go into that, and I'm glad you did because I did not. One of the questions was, how does trafficking, you know, or exploitation? That's what I was using. What are the subtle entry points that people don't recognize, and also the blind, uh, the misconceptions
Yes.
of sex trafficking that people don't actually think about that's keeping them actually blind. And you
It's
answered the
unreal.
question.
Yeah. It's so unreal, and I think it just has to be said because it's happening in every city in America. And for me, that when there's this much darkness, I'm just yelling about it and calling upon our church, who is supposed to be the light, to go into these dark spaces and be the light, like be the answer to this. Like we are supposed to go to these people who are suffering and be part of the solution. And when we're blind to it, like it happens in every other country but America, I'm telling you right now, it's growing rapidly in America, and we are right up there. I mean, I think we're top five. I'm not sure, but we are right up there. I just heard the other day the number two money making thing in the entire world is selling human beings. It's human trafficking. It's
Mhm.
the number two. Number one is drugs. Number two is humans. And we
And I'm glad
cannot
I'm
stand
glad
back.
you mentioned that. You know what's interesting? I'm so glad you mentioned how, even like, selling your body, in exchange for money.
Yeah,
There are subtle entry points that, you know, pe- that people don't recognize. How do they end up actually those subtle things that happen that they end up in that situation? Like you
right.
didn't just
Oh,
become a stripper. How
right.
did you gradually get there?
100%. Like I say, no one grows up and wants to be a stripper. Like
Right.
that's literally no one's dream. And so I say that so like it can shift your mind to not judge someone, right? Like because
Mhm.
we automatically begin to judge these women or these people because of their, occupation. But they were a little girl, they were someone's daughter. They didn't wake up and that wasn't their dream. Usually, I mean, I would say 99.9% of these women have sexual trauma in their background. And so God showed me the moment I was sexually abused as a little girl was the moment the enemy started trafficking me because he started rewriting my story,
Mm.
like he started saying, this is your worth, this is your value. This is what makes others happy. And that is oftentimes the case. Like I sat down as an 18-year-old girl and I looked in a newspaper because I'm that old and I was looking at the classified ads and I was trying to find a job to make money. And I'm looking through and I'm not qualified for this and I'm not qualified for that. But here I'm qualified for it. I have a body because a long time ago, I learned that that was my worth. So
Mm.
that's what I thought was my resume. And it's so sad. It just breaks my heart to see women, think that that is their only worth on this earth is what they bring to the table with their body.
A lot of women feel that way and use their
It's
body and
heartbreaking.
weaponize themselves
It's
in the
heartbreaking.
process. And because of the trauma. So, from your experience, let's go a little deeper. What is the real impact of hidden trauma on a person's identity, especially how they see themselves? You mentioned how they use their bodies, but what would you say from your experience?
Yeah, just undealt with sexual trauma, it leads to side effects like this, like women being promiscuous, or the very opposite, like women not wanting to be touched at all, or, getting into drugs and addiction to numb the pain. Like these are all side effects of the trauma. And if it's undealt with, like, I didn't tell anyone till I was 18 years old. If it's
Mhm.
undealt with, like, I'll say the enemy in your thoughts and all these things that are surfacing in your head over and over, they're rewriting and telling you a story that like this is you're worth nothing but your body. This is you are not enough. This, over and over and over. And so you just begin to believe it, right? Like you
Yep.
begin to be like, okay, well, throw your hands up. That must be true because especially as young women and young men who we go on dates with and things like that, they're telling us the same story. If
Yes.
they're not respecting our boundaries, they're adding to that story, right? And so enough times of those things happening, you just think that's what it is, right? And so now afterwards, after coming out of those things, I'm now retraining my brain and finding healing for, oh, that all men aren't that way. You know what I mean? And that
Yes.
is
Yes.
not what every man thinks of about you all the time. And so it's just, it was like a setup almost. Like I said, the enemy was almost like set up, like you're vulnerable when you have been sexually abused. You're vulnerable.
Yes.
And those things, it's like cycles that keep happening and happening and happening. And you find yourself in situations because your boundaries were crossed at a very young age and they weren't supposed to be. And your no didn't matter. And that no, and the red flags that you used to have begin to drop. Like I had so many red flags in so many relationships, and I just justified them away
Right.
over and
Which
over
which
because of the
which we
abuse.
often do if we're not careful.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's because of those abuse and that mindset that
Hmm.
happened a long time ago, right?
Right.
And so, yeah, I think I hope that answered your question,
Yeah.
but that's just,
Yes, absolutely. So you mentioned how you did not say anything. You didn't say anything until you were 18.
yep.
What, how does what role does shame play in, you not making that step? Like, what was the,
Yeah, it was so interesting because, you don't know why you didn't say anything other than the feel like definitely when I was older, I didn't tell people because of the shame, but I don't know as a child why I didn't say anything other than I was very afraid.
okay.
Um, it was by a cousin who lived with us at the time, and he was still there. And he would like almost like stalk me around the home. And so I just felt very afraid that something was going to happen to me. But now I see it. Shame all over not everyone in that I experience and come across that has sexual trauma. I've hosted sexual trauma groups for years and I know the statistics, and I would say the statistics are actually even wrong because the statistics say that under the age of 18, 1 in 4 little girls will be sexually abused. And those are just
Mm,
reported cases. And my case wasn't reported, and I'm in this world, and almost every single person I've ever met has never had a reported case. So my thinking is closer to 1 and 2. And so those sexual trauma healing rooms that I'm making a space for and bringing in professional, they should be full every single time. These groups should be full, but they're not. And what
that's true.
stops them from coming through the door every time is shame. Because if they walk through the door, they identify themselves as someone who's been sexually traumatized. And even now, like it's so interesting because I wrote 2 books. My first book was From Stilettos to Grace, and it's my
Hmm.
memoir. And it's, what we're talking about today. It's my
Right.
story. It's a good story, right? Like people pick it up and they read it because it's someone else's story. But my
Right.
second book that I just published in August is very different. It's a whole different world that I'm walking into. And thank God
Mm,
that he prepared me because I feel like I would be very insecure, but I'm not. But it's called From a Mess to His Message. And it's a book study, and it's walking through your sexual trauma with God. So the story is no longer about me. It does have my story like pieces sprinkled throughout and things I've learned, of course, but it's challenging the reader to go find their healing and to go deeper. And that
that's awesome.
the first book, man, my friends were like writing all the reviews on Amazon. It was so great. Everyone was tagging me everywhere. But this one, it's crickets. And I know it's not personal.
Oh, wow.
I
Yeah,
know it's,
because it's challenging the person to look into their own,
yeah.
self. And, shame is one of the is there are areas in my life that I used to have shame attached to that I had to realize no more, because we are one the we are one people are one by the blood of the lamb and the words of their testimony, and
Come
my
on.
testimony is what's going to break the yoke,
Right,
because that's why people love stories,
right.
because it's like you don't feel alone in
Yes.
what you're dealing with. So when I now my gauge is, if I can't tell it, I must be, what am I ashamed of? And so that's kind of
Yeah.
how I gauge it, because shame, I always tell people, anything hidden cannot be healed, because shame causes us to hide.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's like, I literally think it is God's like exchange policy. The minute we start bringing the darkness to light is the minute he's able, it's like a transfer. He's able to come in with his light and bring it into those dark spaces. And the situation and the circumstance and the trauma actually becomes physically lighter. And every time it keeps getting
Yes.
lighter
Lighter and
and
lighter.
lighter. And so now I'm telling you a very traumatic story that most people would be in tears about while they're sharing the story, because it's a lot. There's a
Right.
lot of trauma, but because I've said it over and over and I've gotten the healing over and over, it's not, it doesn't have that effect on me anymore. Shame has no hold on me anymore. I'm an open book so much that I wrote books,
Right.
and so, that's why I always scream it from the rooftops because with my story, other people oftentimes will be like, oh my gosh, but you don't understand. I'm too far gone. I could never get healing. Well, my story would illustrate like this girl's too far gone, right? And
Hmm.
so me saying it and now God using me, like my message is that they can say there is hope. Like that if she's not too far gone, maybe I'm not, and maybe he can use my mess and make it his message too. So I just scream it. I don't know what happens on the other side of these podcasts,
Right.
but I do know that every time I speak and I share at an event and share my story of sexual trauma, every single time someone comes up to meet me and they say, me too. And it's usually the first time that they've ever felt safe enough to tell someone me too. And sometimes that woman is 70 years old, and it's the first
Wow.
time she's ever said she was sexually traumatized too. And so that in itself is worth it to me because I know the minute they say me too, I know that moment God starts bringing light into that situation. And I don't know what, happens down the road. I don't know how far they get in their healing, but I know that even one chain removed
Oh,
is
yes.
is worth it, right?
It's worth it. It start breaking the other chains and
Yeah.
chains being
Amen.
broken. How did because some people who go through sexual trauma, the they really feel almost like because it's hard to understand, especially conceptualizing it at a very young age. How could God say he loved me?
Yeah.
How did you find that in your life?
Well, that kind of same thing happened to me. I grew up as Catholic and I didn't know about the relationship piece of it. And so after all this trauma, my relationship was so shallow that I was like, okay, well, if there is a God, then this can't be good because all this bad stuff's happening to me. So I turned away from God for a while. But when I came back and I heard that, you could have a relationship with Jesus and that this world there will be trouble, but if you put your trust in Jesus, that someday, you'll get to go to eternity with him. And so sign me up because this world is hell on earth. And
Right?
yeah, so um
And
I
he's the
started
answer.
yeah. So I had hope for the first time. And so I started like because of these things, like a lot of people couldn't relate to me. I'm in my 20s and I've been divorced. I'm actually a widow now. And so 20-year-olds
Mm.
are out partying. They're like, what in the world with this girl? Like, I can't relate to her. 80-year-old women could relate to me. 20-year-old women could not. And so I found my place of self in my 20s when I asked Jesus into my life in a crash course of relationship dependency on him, where he became like a real friend. And he was it. So I had to develop this relationship where I saw that like even in this hard time, like walking through grief, and I thought that was it for me. And like that he was close to the brokenhearted, and that I would hear messages at church and read Bibles in the story or stories in the Bible that, like there would be hard times. Jesus didn't promise us a perfect world. He actually promised us opposite. There will be hard times, but he's always there. He's always there. And
Yes.
there is free will, and there is people that make mistakes and do really bad things to people. And I'm I'm a I have free will, and I know that I've made some really terrible mistakes, right? And so that's just part of it, being living in this fallen world. So I just had to like lean on him, and it didn't start out pretty, like unicorns and butterflies. Like it was literally like, okay, I'm gonna take this step of obedience, but if you're not gonna meet me, I'm not gonna do it again. And I just, it was a real relationship. Like he just showed up every
That's
time.
beautiful.
And so yeah, it's just like on I wish more Christians would like say the real story. Like it's not like you get saved and everything's amazing,
Oh no.
you know?
Oh no. Oh no, no. But it's going, you're gonna go through it anyway, but at least you're going through it with Christ, because it is
Amen.
I love how you said it's a fallen world. And
Yeah.
because we live in a fallen world, because we're we're not promised to have roses and people some people feel like since I'm in Christ, I don't have problems. No.
Don't
Welcome
we
to the
wish?
problems. Look, welcome to the problems, but you have everything in the Word of God that
Amen.
teach you how to relate to God through those problems, relate to Christ through those
Amen.
problems, and He is the answer. And a lot of times, that's why I said I'm glad you answered that question in a very honest way, because sometimes people do feel like I don't want to talk about God because of what happened to me, or they remain in the victim triangle because they don't know how to get out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And they really just think that they have to come to the cross all cleaned up.
Oh,
And,
please tell about
like,
that.
right, they think that they have to have it all together, and that God won't accept them just as they are in their hot messness. So I just like literally boast in my weakness all the time, because it's not about us at all. If it's about us, we are screwed. Like we are really in trouble. Like
Yes.
I could not have paid the cost for my sin. Only he could. And so it's all about him. It's not anything to
Yes,
do
it
with us.
really
So,
is.
and I think even churches like sometimes do a really poor job of that message, because, we get so like in our religious pants, like you have to do this and you have to do that. And no, you don't. You don't. Like, that's not what Jesus said.
That is not what he said.
He's not what he
They give
said.
all of these extra rules.
Right. We make
Right.
up stupid rules, like, and we're like looking at people like I used to be a stripper, and I remember a time in my life where I got caught up in religion and was looking at people like, "Oh my gosh, I cannot believe her." What? Like, seriously? What are we doing?
Right.
What are we doing? Like, we're
Right.
all a whole hot mess, and even now, and we all need Jesus. And we can't do it on our own. So I think sometimes they go to church and they feel, shame and condemnation. They don't actually feel the Father's love that casts, his perfect love casts out all fear. They don't feel that. They feel the opposite of that. And so they don't get to experience his love and know who he is. Because once they actually taste and see that he is good, they're
Hmm.
on fire.
Right.
They're on
That's true
fire
freedom.
for
That's
him.
true freedom right there.
Yeah.
So,
So
so as an advocate, do you actually go in the strip clubs? I asked that because I have heard of Christians going into strip clubs. And if so, how do you reach them? And when you go in a place like a strip club, how do you get to them?
So she was made for more ministry. I co-founded, and we're kind of a next step towards that. We work here locally with a strip club ministry called Hadassah Hope,
Okay.
and they actually go into the strip clubs. What we do and what we found that God has really called our lives is we just walk alongside of these girls. We are actually leading, I'm leading my From a Mess to His Message book study every Tuesday with a bunch of strippers. They either are in the industry or out of the industry. And we find that their healing you just go so much quicker because they actually have a safe place. And like this is, our
Wow. No
story
shame, no
too.
judgy.
Yeah, it's our story. So they're able to open up and they're able to like feel like there is hope. Like we can go to church and see this amazing Christian woman speaker who seemingly has it all together. And we're like, well, I'm never getting there. So, God, what do you got for me? But like we're real people, and that's the people that God uses anyhow, because in our weakness, He is strong. So yeah.
Yes.
So, and then the advocate piece of it, I've been helping put together some human trafficking awareness events, and we just go in um, to different churches and share our story. We bring experts in and things like that because really it's just wild that our church in the United States is sending everyone on ministry and missions into other countries, and it's happening right there in their neighborhood, and they are very unaware. They
That is
really
so true.
they still think it's everywhere else when it's right here. I think I'm sitting right now. I think Florida's like number 6. It's very, very high up there. I'm sure just in my neighborhood, there's a case. Tim Tebow's foundation is right here in Jacksonville, Florida, where I sit. It
Mm.
is happening. You can look up at a map, especially Tim Tebow right now has a map, right? That there's dots on the United States of all the cases that are happening in America, and you can barely see anything without a red dot on it. It is happening, and we have to rise up as a church. Like the world is not going to be the answer to this much darkness.
No. I'm
It,
glad you mentioned that. It's funny, you right in the vein of where I'm going. In your opinion, how can churches and or communities create safer spaces for people who are dealing with that? Because it is a dark world that they are in. What do you do to pull them, to help to support them in pulling them out?
yeah, I think first things first is that awareness advocacy piece, because what happens is when I share my story, I help bring awareness, right? But I
Hmm.
also start breaking down because of my story and because of how intimately close I am with God. I start breaking down some of those religion and judgment and mindsets, and they're able to open their mind like, oh my gosh, this is a human being. This isn't an object. Right? Like this is
Right.
someone's mom, this is someone's daughter, this is someone's sister, someone's aunt, whatever. This girl never wanted her life to be that way. And so I think when we do these events, we bring in different ministries and organizations, and we really lead it up to the Holy Spirit. We are asking them, like, take a next step, whatever that is. We don't care. You can join She Was Made for More ministry and sow into our ministry, or it can be over here where these ministries are going into the strip club, or this organization is having foster care, a foster care system, or this ministry does peer counseling. We don't care. We know that the Holy Spirit has some place for you in this purpose. Like we are his hands, we're his feet, like we're
Mm-hmm.
all these different moving parts in the kingdom. And it's certainly not about competition, it's about kingdom. So we're just
Yes.
literally teeing you up and saying, here's some really strong people that are already making a difference in this
Okay.
realm. And it's in every city, there's people that are passionate about this. So you can find wherever you're at ways to get involved. Or, maybe God is saying, I want you to birth a ministry. You're bringing something that no one else can bring to the table. And so I want you to do that. And so we're just giving you stories to inspire you, experts and professionals to bring in statistics, side effects of these things, what to look for, who to call, and here's how you can get involved. And then saying, now go, church, go, be the body of Christ, be the light. And you're going to find your place. Like one of my pastors from the back in the day, Terry Phillips, he said this line in a sermon, and it has stayed with me for years now. And he said, what breaks your heart? And he said, there in that, you will find your purpose.
Yes.
And I know for
So
a
true.
fact you can't hear these stories and your heart not be broken.
Mm. Wow. That's amazing. So, what else will you want to share with the audience that we did not discuss?
Oh gosh, I was mouthy today.
No,
Um,
no, no. You were great.
Thank you. Yeah, I would just say that, like I see the power in having someone else that's been through something. So I have written 2 books, and if you know some girl, or someone's in your life, or you're the someone who's gone through those things, I would just encourage you to pick up my books, From Stilettos to Grace. Particularly, it's my memoir. You're going to find a space where you're going to hear my story and you're going to be like, you know what? I'm not too far gone. God can heal me too. Because I walked through my whole life journey and my healing journey too. And then if you want to go deeper, if you really want to go deeper and you want to touch the hem of his garment and him to bring wholeness in your life, because we just stop. We think we're done, okay? But there's always more. This side of heaven, there is always more healing. And God being the answer to that is huge. So I would just encourage you to pick up my book, From a Mess to His Message. Give it to someone in your life who has walked through any sort of trauma. It doesn't have to be sexual trauma. And the book's not about me. It leaves you with questions at the end and journaling just to talk to God about. Like, God, what is the root of this? Why can't I take a next step? And asking the source. And if
Yes.
one word from God, I'm here to tell you, can change everything about everything in your life forever. If he gives you revelation, it can change everything about that. So I set you up with this book to have revelation, because I can tell you all the things all day long. But if it's not revelation from the Lord for you, then it means nothing. You're going to forget about this and you're going to move on with your life. But if he puts his finger on something, it's going to change everything. And so that's what that book is about. It is talking to the Lord and saying, where's the root? Where do I go next? And and
What's
he's
the
your
message in
counselor.
my mess?
Yes. And
I
he can
love it.
make, yeah, exactly. He can make your mess his message. And you can start breaking shame off. And he can start making those situations lighter. And you can start telling people, and you don't need a platform. You literally can just share your message with a friend. And that,
Yes.
I have so many friends. One of my friends just created a safe space for me for the very first time to openly share my story. That friend hasn't written a book. She doesn't speak on a stage. She just created a space for me. And because of that, I am
Mm.
walking in freedom. My children get a different mom. My grandchildren get a different grandmother. And for generations, they're going to be affected by this one woman sitting down and letting me bring my darkness to light and being a safe space. And so that to me is more important than anyone on a stage. If you can just let someone have a safe space to open up and bring their darkness to light, you never know what that's going to do. I mean, literally, it could change everything about everything for their entire life.
Love it. Tiffany, thank you so much for sharing and sharing your heart, sharing your journey and sharing what you're doing for others is so amazing. And I just want to say thank you for that. And also, to the audience, you're not too far gone. Um, there will be links to her books and also to how to contact or connect with Tiffany. As you know, in the world, we all have our own mess, but she has a book that helps us get his message in the mess.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you want to support someone, and I like that, you can be either the person who listens or the person who advocates or the person who be a part of any ministry that's dealing with those who are stuck in that dark place, and that could be dark places of any parts of your life. So thank you so much to the audience. Thank you so much for listening. If you think this podcast can bless someone else, please do share, comment, and don't forget to subscribe because I always have amazing people on. Until then, have a fantastic Monday. It's your time to shine. Journey to chart. Coach Rice wisdom.